What did you just watch? An unfinished game. So today I'm going to go over how I made my game and the reasons for failure. I can attribute my failure in submitting my game to the jam for 3 reasons really. Overscope, too many features to complete. I also plan to add in an online leaderboard since the game needed one for the jam, or offline, but I thought I could learn to add an online leaderboard in a reasonable amount of time, which really brings me to my next point, poor time management. I also overestimated the time I had. For starters, I joined a day late in the 72-hour game jam, though not much of an excuse really, but life during that weekend didn't really allow me to sit in one place too long. Though I did kind of contribute to that. Art, that's the last point. Yeah, the animations in the game are pretty scuffed, and I suck at coloring. I was rushing, but I decided to go with 2D frame-by-frame arm animations for the first-person player character, and frame-by-frame takes a while, but I still love the art style though. In fact, this is probably the first time I used my own art for a game. First of all, I needed to export to HTML5. It's a known fact that more people will play your jam submission if it's playable on the web instead of having to download a suspicious file. This was probably the only thing I planned before the jam, how I could compile my Rust code for Godot's web export. Thankfully, the Godot Rust book has a page on this, although it was a little worrying when there was a disclaimer saying this was only tested on Linux, but I had faith in the amazing Godot Rust developers that it would work on my Windows machine. I needed to clone the Godot GitHub repository and build export templates for HTML5 with GDNative enabled. Then, I needed to clone the Inscription repository so I could actually get Rust to add it as a target, or a build type, so to say. Godot uses Inscription for web exports. Finally, I just needed to build my Rust code using Rust Nightly, but I needed to use a specific version of Rust Nightly and Inscription for the web export to work. Actually compiling the code is a bit of a pain though, because I need to run these commands each time. Since these commands are Linux, I use the call and set commands instead for Windows. I also needed to change that include path because for some reason the environment variable wouldn't be set, so I just copy and pasted the actual path from my computer instead of relying on an environment variable. A week flew by, and then I realized one morning, I joined a game jam, right? Well, it turns out my friend too would be starting a day late because he had also been busy. Anyways, the theme was thievery, and I automatically thought of those caterpillars from Hollow Knight you could save, and you could see all the ones you've saved gathered in a room later in the game. So I planned to make a game where you would save capybaras from flying snakes. I specifically chose a flying enemy because they didn't really need any complicated movement AI. I'll also sprinkle in 3 abilities to help out, like dashing, double jumping, and shooting a satanic ball, which hopefully made the game more dynamic. And I realized early on that I would need to stop caring so much about movement and just get on with other features because I really didn't have time to be a perfectionist. Anyways, I mentioned overscoping earlier, so what did I plan to add? The online leaderboard, which I just carelessly assumed I could learn to implement in a couple hours. I guess when you've been on a programming high, you become fearlessly bold. I was going to use a tool called Loot Locker, which was free unless I had 10,000 active players. Nothing to worry about really. I mean, look at my subscriber count, man. Now, the jam did mention that you needed to add either an offline or online leaderboard, and as it turns out, I didn't have time to do both, but perhaps my biggest plight was the levels. I'm a newborn baby when it comes to designing levels, especially multiple sets of levels that have a reasonable learning curve. So yeah, I was stumped on that end. On top of that, I needed to add a timer, a main menu to select levels, and hey, I even decided I might try some voice acting, or something like that. Anyways, I would like to participate in another 2 to 3 day jam, so I could get used to working with very little time. As for poor time management, I used most of the spare time I could muster by working on my game. I pretty much recorded the entire development of my game from start to finish, and the clips add up to around 6 hours. Yeah, also, on my last day of working on the game, I was invited somewhere, and you know, successful people know how to say no. Yeah, I read an article on that, but turns out I said yes. I was kind of split on the decision, but hey, I don't really regret it because I had a fun time, and if my friends watching this, then please don't kill me. Lastly, the art, which I actually like. You probably don't think it's good, but it's honest work. I actually used my dusted drawing tablet this time, and I will say with regards to poor time management, I probably spent most of the last day rushing the art and then adding it into the game. And I would have just used level textures from my last game instead of actually making my own for the levels. Alas, I just knew this game wouldn't be done, despite lying to myself that I could. So yeah, I'm going to spend more time learning 3D modeling so I could actually work on making my own stuff instead of using other people's. And it's probably more time efficient than drawing everything frame by frame. Still love the animation style though. Also, I know I could spend maybe another week working on the game, but I just lack the motivation to do that when there's other more enticing projects I'm going to work on that will hopefully be great content. For example, I'm going to work on refining my skills for the 7-day roguelike jam, which I'm determined not to fail this time. Stay tuned.